Now starting with the hormone, as we studied earlier, the hormones are nothing but they are the secretion secreted by ductless gland and which is as a chemical messengers. The term hormone was first coined by the E. Sterling. Now the properties of hormone. Though the hormone act as a chemical messenger and it effective in very low concentration, that means though they are chemical messengers, they require very less concentration. That means the very low concentration of hormone or hormones, they are required in very low quantity to show their effect. It acts as a regulator that inhibit or stimulate or modify the specific process. So it is the second property. It is act as a regulator and it may be inhibit or it may stimulate or modify the specific process. Some hormones interact with the receptor present on the plasma membrane of the target cell, whereas some enter the nucleus to interact with the gene. That means some hormones they may be bind with the receptors which is present on the plasma membrane of the target cell or the target organ, and they show their action, whereas some hormone directly enter into the nucleus to interact with the genes. So in this way the hormones show their action. Then the next property is hypersecretion or the hyposecretion of hormone lead to the various disorder. Okay, so both these, if the hypersecretion means if the hormones are secreted in more quantity than the requirement, then it lead to the disorder. Or if it is hyposecretion, that means if their secretion is lower, then also it causes particular disorder. The hormone secretion is regulated by positive or the negative feedback mechanism. That means the hormone secretion is itself regulated by the positive or the negative feedback mechanism. Suppose the concentration of any hormone is get increased in the body, then the negative feedback mechanism is given or it is get sent to the pituitary gland to stop the secretion of particular tropic hormone. Then that hormone whatever the hormone level is get increased, that level of hormone is get decreased in the blood. So that is what it's the feedback may be positive or it may be negative. Chemically they are hormones. Chemically the hormones are proteins, amines, peptide, steroid, glycoprotein, catecholamine. So the chemically these hormones are of different type. Hormones may be protein in nature, they may be steroid, they may be amide, they may be peptide. Hormones may be glycoprotein or they may be catecholamine. So these are the different properties of hormone. First one is they require in very less quantity. The second one is they may be act as inhibitor or stimulator for the particular process or to modify the particular process. Then the hormone may be interact with this receptor or they may be directly enter inside the nucleus to interact with the gene. The next one is hyposecretion or the hyposecretion of hormone lead to the various disorder, and the hormone secretion sent or it get or the secretion of hormone is itself is get regulated by the positive feedback mechanism or the negative feedback mechanism. And the last one is chemically the hormones may be protein, may be amine, peptide, steroid, glycoprotein, or they may be a catecholamine. So these are properties of hormone, and these properties may be asked for 2 marks or may be asked for 3 marks in your exam. Then the next one is mechanism of hormone action. So in this particular topic we will study how these hormones act. So hormones produce their effect on the target organ. Target organ means that is the distant organ. That means the hormone gets secreted by a particular gland which is present at a different location, whereas it acts on the organ which is present at a different location. Okay, so the secretion which is secreted by a particular gland, that is the hormone, that hormone get released in the blood, and through the blood that hormone get carried to the different target organ. Now this hormone, how this hormone shows their action? Suppose if hormone reach to the particular target organ, then that hormone bind to the receptor. This receptor may be present on the cell membrane, or it may be intracellular. That means it may be receptor may be present inside the cell. This hormone receptor complex formed, and this lead to the biochemical changes. So actually the hormone, first of all, this hormone bind with the receptor. When this hormone reach to the particular target organ, it bind with the receptor, and the hormone receptor complex is get formed, and then it gives the particular biochemical change. That means the hormone shows their action. So the first one is the mode of hormone action through the membrane receptor. Suppose the membrane receptors are there. So how these hormones show their action? The hormone like catecholamine, peptide, polypeptide hormones are not lipid soluble, so they cannot enter their target cell through the plasma membrane. Why they cannot enter the plasma membrane? Because it is bilayer, it is the bilipid layer. Plasma membrane have the two lipid layer. Okay, so the hormones like catecholamine, peptide, polypeptide hormones are not lipid soluble. So though they are not lipid soluble, they cannot enter inside the target cell through the plasma membrane. So these hormone interact with the surface receptors. So these hormone, they do not enter inside the plasma membrane. So what this hormone do? Though they are not enter in the plasma membrane, because they are not lipid soluble, so this hormone interact with the surface receptor, and which initiate the metabolic activity. Okay, so the hormone receptor complex causes the release of enzyme adenylate cyclase from the receptor side. This enzyme form cyclic AMP, and this cyclic AMP form the ATP of the cell. The cyclic AMP activities enzymatic action. The hormone act as a first messenger, and CAMP is a second messenger. So other kind of second messengers are Ca++, CGMP, IP, that is the inositol triphosphate. So I am telling meaning of this. Okay, so the hormone receptor complex which is get formed when this hormone interact with the surface receptor which is present on the cell membrane. So it is bind with that receptor and form the complex. Then when it form the complex, the enzyme adenylate release. Okay, so the enzyme adenylate cyclase, it get released from the receptor side. Now this enzyme form the cyclic AMP, that is a CAMP, from the ATP. So when this enzyme get released, this enzyme form the CAMP from ATP of the cell. So the ATP form the cyclic AMP. Now this cyclic AMP activate the enzyme action. So this enzymatic action is get activated by cyclic AMP, which is get formed. Now the hormone act as a first messenger, and the CAMP which is get formed over here, it act as a second messenger. The other kind of messengers are C++, GMP and IP. So it will be very clear from this diagram. Suppose C. If now the cell membrane is bilipid layer, so hormone that are not lipid soluble, they do not directly enter inside the cell. So what they do, they bind with the receptor which is present on the cell membrane. Okay, so you will find that this is what, it's a hormone, and this red which is shown over here is a receptor. So the hormone receptor complex get formed over here. Okay, so though this hormone receptor complex is get formed, the GTP get formed, that is guanosine triphosphate. Okay, and due to this GTP or due to this complex get formed, it stimulate the formation of enzyme, that is adenylate cyclase. So this adenylate cyclase get formed. Okay, now this, after the formation of this enzyme adenylate cyclase, the ATP which is present in the cell, that ATP convert into the cAMP, that is the cyclic AMP. Now this cyclic AMP is act as a second messenger. So here the first messenger is what? It's a hormone, and second messenger over here is a cAMP. So cAMP is act as a second messenger, and cAMP activate the protein kinase, and in this way the action of this hormone actually takes place. So another example given over here is, it is what hormone FSH, that is a follicle stimulating hormone. That hormone bind with the receptor of what? This membrane is shown in, this membrane is of what? Is the ovarian cell membrane. Okay, so the membrane which is present on the ovary. So the FSH bind with the receptor. FSH do not directly enter inside the ovary. Okay, so because it is insoluble in lipid, so it binds with the receptor. So that is the first response. Then second one is the generation of second messenger, that is the cyclic AMP or C++ get formed. So when this enzyme bind with the receptor, what it form? It form the cyclic AMP. Now this cyclic AMP is act as a second messenger, and it give rise to the biochemical responses. This biochemical responses means what? It carry out the ovarian growth. Okay, so in this way the first mode of hormone action through the membrane receptor takes place. Now the next one is the mode of action through the intracellular receptor. Now as we studied that hormone which are not lipid soluble, so they do not enter inside the plasma membrane. Now just opposite to that, the steroid and the hormone membrane are lipid soluble and can easily pass through the plasma membrane of target cell into the cytoplasm. So listen it carefully, the hormone like steroid and the thyroid. So both these hormones, they are lipid soluble. Though they are lipid soluble, they directly enter inside the plasma membrane. Okay, because they are lipid soluble. So they get soluble by the lipid layer of plasma membrane. So though they are they get easily dissolved, or they get easily enter inside the cell or the target cell into the cytoplasm. So the hormone like steroid and the thyroid hormone, they directly enter into the cell through the plasma membrane. Now they enter into the cytoplasm. When they enter in the cytoplasm, they bind to the specific intracellular receptor proteins, forming a hormone receptor complex that enters the nucleus. So after entry in the cytoplasm, they bind with what? They bind with the specific or the special receptor proteins forming a hormone receptor complex. Now that complex enter the nucleus. In the nucleus, the hormone receptor complex bind to the specific regulatory site of DNA. So when this complex enter inside the nucleus, it bind to the specific regulatory site of DNA. So it's bind with the DNA, a specific site of the DNA. The activated genes transcribe mRNA which direct the protein synthesis and the enzyme in the cytoplasm. The action of lipid soluble hormone is slower but long lasting. So this is what the action of mode of action through the intracellular receptor. So the steroid and the thyroid hormone, though they are lipid soluble, they directly enter inside the cell. When they enter inside the cell, enter the cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm, they bind with the specific receptor protein and forming the complex. Now this complex enter inside the nucleus. After entering the nucleus, they attached or they bind with the specific regulatory site of DNA, and the transcription of mRNA takes place. Now all of you know it very betterly how the mRNAs get transcribed on the DNA, on the DNA. Okay, so here the mRNA formation takes place, and also the synthesis of enzyme in the cytoplasm. And the last one is the action of lipid soluble hormone is very slower, but this action is long lasting. So it will get very clear from this diagram that these are the free hormone which is shown. They released by the blood capillary. Now this lipid soluble hormone, they diffused inside the cell. After enter inside the cell, they enter into the nucleus. Okay, here they first bind with the activated receptor or the particular receptor which is the protein receptor, and it form the complex. After forming the complex, they bind with the DNA, and when they bind particular side of the DNA, the mRNA formation takes place. Now this mRNA here it is the reading, that is the ribosome. So where the mRNA newly formed mRNA direct the synthesis of specific protein on the ribosome. So here the new protein is get formed. Okay, so this is what a second action. So this is all about the topic is. Thank you so much.